They said she didn't belong there. What they didn't know was that she owned the place. The rain had stopped just minutes before Captain Alana Rivers stepped out of the taxi. The pavement outside Meridian Airlines executive terminal gleamed under the gray morning sky, reflecting the glass towers that stretched upward like monuments to ambition and power. She paid the driver, grabbed her leather briefcase, and straightened her uniform jacket. 23 years. 23 years since she'd first put on this uniform. 23 years since she'd walked into a cockpit as a terrified first officer, hands shaking on the controls, wondering if she'd made the right choice. 23 years of early mornings, sleepless nights, missed birthdays, and moments where she questioned everything. But she'd never quit. Her navy blue uniform was immaculate. Every crease sharp, every button polished. 4 gold stripes ran across her shoulders, the unmistakable mark of a senior captain. 15,000 flight hours, certifications in 7 aircraft types. 0 incidents, 0 accidents, a record that spoke for itself. But Alana had learned a long time ago that records didn't always speak loud enough. The revolving glass doors spun slowly as she entered the lobby. The space was vast. Marble floors, high ceilings, chandeliers that sparkled like frozen stars. This wasn't the regular terminal where passengers lined up with boarding passes and carry-ons. This was the executive terminal. The place where corporate meetings happened. Where senior staff gathered. Where decisions that affected thousands of employees were made behind closed doors. Alana had been here dozens of times. She knew the layout by heart. Conference Room B was on the 3rd floor, accessible by the elevator just past the reception desk. She walked toward it, her heels clicking softly against the marble. The man behind the reception desk didn't look up. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with neatly combed hair and a burgundy vest that matched the company's branding. His fingers moved across a keyboard, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him. Alana approached the desk and waited. He still didn't look up. She cleared her throat gently. "Excuse me." His fingers paused. He glanced at her. Just a quick flick of his eyes, and then returned to his screen. "Staff entrances are downstairs," he said flatly. Alana blinked. For a moment, she thought she'd misheard him. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Staff entrances," he repeated, still not looking at her. "Downstairs. First door on the left. You can't come through here." Alana felt something tighten in her chest. She knew this feeling. She'd felt it before, many times, but knowing it didn't make it any easier. She took a slow breath. "I'm not looking for the staff entrance," she said evenly. "I'm here for the quarterly captain's briefing. Conference Room B, 3rd floor." Now he looked at her. Really looked at her. His eyes swept over her face, her hair, her skin. Then they dropped to her uniform, but only briefly. As if what he saw didn't match what he expected. "Ma'am," he said, his tone shifting to something colder, "this floor is restricted. Only authorized personnel are allowed past this desk." Alana's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand. I am authorized personnel. I'm Captain Alana Rivers." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her company credentials, a laminated badge with her photo, her name, her rank, and her clearance level printed in bold letters, "Executive Access." She held it up so he could see it clearly. He glanced at it, barely a second. Then he looked back at his screen. "I don't know who gave you that badge," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "but captains don't just walk in here unannounced. You need an appointment. And if you don't leave right now, I'm going to have to call security." Alana stood perfectly still. Her heart was pounding, but her face showed nothing. She had trained herself for moments like this. Stay calm. Stay dignified. Don't raise your voice. Don't give them a reason to call you aggressive, difficult, or emotional. But inside, something was breaking. Because this wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the 10th time. It was the 100th, the 1000th. The countless, invisible times she'd been stopped, questioned, doubted, dismissed, not because of her qualifications, but because of what people saw when they looked at her. Behind her, the elevator doors opened. 2 men stepped out. Both wore the same navy blue uniform she did. Both had 4 gold stripes on their shoulders. Both were captains. Both were white. They walked past the reception desk without stopping. Without showing their badges. Without saying a word, the receptionist glanced up and smiled. "Good morning, gentlemen. Coffee's fresh in the lounge." They nodded and kept walking, disappearing down the hall toward the conference rooms. Alana's hands clenched around her briefcase handle. She turned back to the receptionist. "Did you ask them for an appointment?" she said quietly. He frowned. "Excuse me, those two men who just walked past. Did you ask them for an appointment? Did you check their credentials?" His frown deepened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to lower your voice." "My voice is perfectly calm," Alana said. And it was. But there was something in her tone now, something sharp and unyielding. "I'm simply asking a question. Why didn't you stop them?" The receptionist's face flushed. "I don't have time for this. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling security." He reached for the phone. Alana took a step back. She could leave. She could walk away. She could go downstairs, call the office, straighten this out quietly. But she was tired. Tired of being polite. Tired of making other people comfortable. Tired of swallowing her anger so they wouldn't call her difficult. "Go ahead," she said softly. "Call them." The receptionist blinked, surprised. But he picked up the phone anyway. "Yeah, this is the front desk. We've got a situation here. Someone's refusing to leave. Can you send someone down?" He hung up and looked at her with a mixture of annoyance and satisfaction. "Security's on the way. I suggest you leave before this gets ugly." Alana didn't move. She stood there, briefcase in hand, eyes steady, waiting. 3 minutes passed. Then a woman in a gray blazer appeared from one of the side offices. She was older, maybe late 40s, with sharp features and an expression that looked permanently skeptical. Her name tag read, Sandra Calloway, Operations Manager. She walked up to the desk, glanced at Alana, and then at the receptionist. "What's going on here, Jason?" Jason gestured toward Alana. "This woman is claiming to be a captain, but she doesn't have an appointment. I asked her to leave, but she's refusing." Sandra turned to Alana. Her smile was polite, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" Alana met her gaze. "Yes," she said calmly. "There is." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "And what would that be?" "I'm Captain Alana Rivers. I'm scheduled for the quarterly captain's briefing at 10 a.m. in Conference Room B. I've attended this briefing for the past 7 years. But your receptionist seems to think I don't belong here." Sandra's eyes flicked to Jason, then back to Alana. Her expression didn't change. "Captain Rivers," she repeated slowly, as if testing the name. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. But protocol requires all attendees to be pre-cleared by executive administration. Were you on the list?" Alana's patience was wearing thin. "I've never needed to be on a list before." Sandra tilted her head slightly, her smile still in place. "Well, things change. Policies tighten. Security measures get updated. I'm sure you understand." She paused deliberately. "Why don't you wait in the public lounge downstairs, and I'll make some calls to verify your attendance." The pause before attendance was intentional. Alana felt it like a slap. She had been patient. She had been professional. She had shown her credentials, explained herself, kept her voice calm. And it didn't matter, because they had already decided who she was the moment they looked at her. Sandra turned to leave. That's when Alana spoke again, but this time, her voice was different. Colder, sharper, the voice she used in the cockpit when something was about to go very wrong. "Ms. Calloway." Sandra stopped. "You should make that call right now," Alana said quietly. "Before this goes somewhere you can't take it back." Sandra turned slowly, her smile fading. "Are you threatening me?" "No," Alana said. "I'm giving you a chance." For a moment, Sandra just stared at her. Then she pulled out her phone, her movements sharp and irritated. She dialed a number and pressed the phone to her ear, her eyes never leaving Alana's face. "Yes, this is Calloway. I need verification on someone claiming to be a captain." She paused. "Alana Rivers." Another pause. Then Sandra's face changed. The irritation drained away. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly. She pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at it as if it had just burned her. When she looked back at Alana, all the color had drained from her face. There's been a mistake." "No," Alana said softly. "There hasn't." Sandra's hands were trembling now. "Captain Rivers, I sincerely apologize. There was a miscommunication. Please, let me escort you upstairs myself. We can. No. Sandra blinked. I'm sorry. I said no. Alana's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I'm not going upstairs. Not yet. But the meeting can wait, Alana said. She turned to Jason, who had gone very pale. You called security, she said quietly. Let's wait for them to arrive. Jason stammered. Ma'am, I didn't mean. Yes, you did, Alana said. You meant exactly what you said. You looked at me, and you decided I didn't belong here. You didn't check my credentials. You didn't listen to me. You just decided. She let that hang in the air. Sandra was panicking now. Captain Rivers, please. I can fix this. I can. Fix it. Alana's voice was soft, but it cut like a blade. You can't fix 23 years of this. You can't fix every time I've been stopped. Questioned. Doubted. You can't fix the fact that two men walked past this desk without showing a single piece of ID, and you smiled at them. Sandra opened her mouth, but no words came out. Alana took a slow breath. I gave you a chance, Ms. Calloway. I told you to make that call. But you didn't believe me. You didn't believe I was who I said I was, because of what you saw when you looked at me. Sandra's face crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are, Alana said. But sorry isn't enough. She pulled out her phone. Sandra's eyes widened in horror. What are you doing? I'm making a call, Alana said simply. She dialed. The phone rang twice before a deep voice answered. Alana, is everything all right? No, David, it's not. There was a pause on the other end. Then, in a voice that had gone very cold, where are you? Executive terminal, main lobby. I'll be there in 2 minutes. The line went dead. Sandra looked like she might faint. Who did you just call? Alana didn't answer. She didn't need to. The lobby had gone very quiet. A few employees had noticed the commotion and were watching from a distance, pretending to look busy while stealing glances toward the reception desk. Jason stood frozen behind the counter, his face pale and slick with sweat. Sandra Calloway stood beside Alana, wringing her hands, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. Captain Rivers, Sandra said, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, let me fix this before. Before what? Alana's tone was even. Before your boss finds out. Before this becomes a problem. Sandra flinched. It's already a problem, Alana continued. It's been a problem for a very long time. The only difference is that today, I'm not pretending it isn't. Sandra looked like she wanted to say something, but before she could, the elevator doors at the far end of the lobby slid open. David Crane stepped out. He was in his late 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that could cut through a boardroom full of executives in seconds. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone in that effortless way that only powerful people could pull off. His expression was calm, but there was something in the set of his jaw, something hard and dangerous. He crossed the lobby in long, purposeful strides, his shoes clicking against the marble. When he reached them, he didn't look at Sandra. He didn't look at Jason. He looked at Alana. Tell me what happened. Alana's voice was steady, professional. She recounted everything. The receptionist refusing to acknowledge her credentials. Sandra's dismissive attitude. The two captains who walked past without question. The threat to call security. David listened in silence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask questions. He just listened, his expression growing colder with every word. When Alana finished, he turned to Sandra. Is this true? Sandra's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mr. Crane, I was just following protocol. Protocol. David's voice was ice. Our protocol is to treat every employee with respect. Our protocol is to trust the people wearing our uniform. Our protocol is not to humiliate a senior captain in our own building. Sandra's knees looked like they might buckle. David turned to Jason. What's your name? Jason could barely speak. Jason Merritt, sir. Jason Merritt, David repeated, as if committing it to memory. You told Captain Rivers to leave. I didn't know she was. You didn't know because you didn't look, David said, his voice sharp. You saw what you wanted to see. You made an assumption, And that assumption just cost you your job. Jason's face went white. Sir, please, I didn't mean. You're suspended, David said flatly. Effective immediately. Collect your things and leave the building. HR will contact you within 48 hours regarding termination proceedings. Jason looked like he might cry. Sir, I have rent, I have bills. You should have thought of that before you treated one of our most senior captains like an intruder, David said. Now leave, before I have you escorted out by security. Jason stumbled backward, his hands shaking. He grabbed his jacket from behind the desk and hurried toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent lobby. David turned back to Sandra. You're suspended as well. Sandra's face crumpled. Mr. Crane, please. I have a family. I have a mortgage. I didn't know. You didn't know because you chose not to know, David said coldly. Captain Rivers showed you her credentials. She told you who she was. And instead of believing her, you questioned her. You doubted her. You made her wait like she was some kind of problem that needed to be managed. Tears were streaming down Sandra's face now. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please, don't do this. David's expression didn't soften. You're right. You made a mistake. And now you're going to live with the consequences. He gestured toward the exit. Leave, now. Sandra looked at Alana, her eyes desperate. Captain Rivers, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Alana's face was unreadable. I know you are, she said quietly. But sorry doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase how you made me feel. And it doesn't change the fact that you would have done the same thing to the next person who didn't look the way you expected them to. Sandra's shoulders shook with silent sobs. She turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking unevenly against the marble. When she was gone, the lobby was silent again. David let out a long breath and turned to Alana. I'm sorry, he said, and this time, his voice was softer. I'm so sorry this happened. Alana nodded slowly. Thank you. It's not enough, David said. An apology isn't enough. This should never have happened in the first place. He looked around the lobby. The employees who had been watching quickly looked away, pretending to be busy again. How long has this been going on? David asked. Alana let out a bitter laugh. How long have I been working here? David's jaw tightened. That long? Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I want to fix this. Not just for you, for everyone. Alana looked at him. You can't fix it by firing 2 people, David. This is bigger than them. I know, David said. But it's a start. He pulled out his phone and made a call. This is Crane. I need you to assemble every employee in the executive terminal. Yes, right now. I don't care if they're in the middle of something. I want everyone in the main lobby in 10 minutes. He hung up and looked at Alana. I want to do something, he said. I want to make sure this never happens again. But I need your help. Alana studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. All right, she said. Let's do it. 10 minutes later, the lobby was filled. Receptionists, security staff, operations managers, administrative assistants, even a few pilots who had been passing through. They all stood in a loose semicircle, murmuring to each other, confused and nervous. David Crane stood in the center, his hands in his pockets, his expression hard. Alana stood beside him. When the murmuring died down, David spoke. Thank you all for coming, he said, his voice carrying easily across the space. I know this is unusual. But what happened here today was also unusual. And unacceptable. He gestured to Alana. This is Captain Alana Rivers. Some of you know her. Some of you don't. But today, she was stopped at that desk. He pointed to the reception area. She was questioned, doubted, told she didn't belong here. And why? He let the question hang in the air. Because someone made an assumption. Someone looked at her and decided she wasn't who she said she was. Someone chose not to see her uniform, her credentials, her 23 years of service to this company. His voice grew harder. That assumption almost cost 2 people their careers. And it cost this company something far more valuable, trust. He paused, letting his words sink in. Let me be very clear, he continued. This company was built on the backs of people who were told they didn't belong. People who fought to be here. People like Captain Rivers, who flew her first solo flight when most of you were still in school. Who trained half the pilots in this building. Who helped design the safety protocols that keep our passengers alive every single day? He looked around the crowd. And if you can't see that, if you can't see past the color of someone's skin, or their gender, or their age, or anything else that has nothing to do with their qualifications, then you don't belong here. The silence was absolute. David turned to Alana. Captain Rivers has something she'd like to say. Alana stepped forward. For a moment, she just looked at them. All these people, all these faces, some she recognized, some she didn't, and then she spoke. I've spent my entire life proving I belong, she said quietly. In flight school, I was the only black woman in my class. Instructors assumed I was there because of some diversity program. Passengers assumed I was a flight attendant. Other pilots assumed I didn't know what I was doing. Her voice was steady, but there was pain in it. And I proved them wrong. Every single time. I worked harder, studied longer, flew better, because I had to. Because if I made even one mistake, it wouldn't just reflect on me. It would reflect on every black woman who came after me. She paused. But I'm tired, she said. Not because I can't do it, but because I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to prove myself over and over again just to be treated with the same respect that's automatically given to everyone else. She looked at the crowd. Today, I was humiliated in this building. In our building. By people who should have known better. And I could walk away. I could accept an apology and move on. But that won't change anything. Her voice grew stronger. So I'm not walking away. I'm standing here, in front of all of you, and I'm saying, this ends now. Not just for me, for everyone. For every person who's ever been doubted. For every young girl who dreams of flying but thinks she can't because she doesn't look like the pilots she sees on TV. She took a breath. Respect isn't something you earn by proving yourself 1,000 times. Respect is something every person deserves, simply because they're human. And if you can't give that, if you can't look at someone in this uniform and trust that they belong here, then you're the problem. No one moved. No one spoke. Alana looked at David. That's what I wanted to say. David nodded. Then he turned back to the crowd. From today forward, he said, his voice ringing with authority, this company will implement mandatory unconscious bias training for every single employee. Not as punishment, but as a commitment. We will hold ourselves accountable. We will examine our assumptions. And we will make sure that no one is ever made to feel like they don't belong here again. He paused. Captain Rivers will be leading that initiative. She'll be working directly with HR and executive leadership to design the program. And I expect full cooperation from every single one of you. He looked around the room. If you have a problem with that, you're welcome to leave. But if you stay on our terms. Respect, dignity, equality, no exceptions. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. It was one of the pilots, a man Alana recognized from previous briefings. He was older, white, with graying hair and a kind face. Others joined in, and then the entire lobby was applauding. Alana felt something break inside her chest, something she hadn't realized she'd been holding onto. It wasn't just about today. It was about every day before today. Every moment she'd been doubted. Every time she'd swallowed her anger. Every time she'd smiled and stayed professional when all she wanted to do was scream. And now, finally, someone was listening. 3 days later, Alana sat in a conference room on the 9th floor of Meridian Airline's corporate headquarters. The room was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Rain streaked down the glass, blurring the lights of distant buildings into soft, golden smears. Across the table sat David Crane, the company's chief human resources officer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia Lim, and 2 members of the executive board. We want to move fast on this, Patricia said, tapping her pen against a legal pad covered in notes. The incident at the executive terminal has already made its way through the company grapevine. Employees are talking. Some are angry. Some are defensive. We need to address this before it becomes a bigger problem. It's already a bigger problem, Alana said calmly. This didn't start 3 days ago. It's been happening for years. We're just finally acknowledging it. Patricia nodded. Agreed. Which is why we want you to lead the initiative. You have credibility. Employees will listen to you. Alana leaned back in her chair. I'll do it. But I have conditions. David raised an eyebrow. Go on. This can't just be a training module that people click through and forget, Alana said. It has to be real. It has to involve actual conversations. Actual accountability. And it has to come from the top down. What do you mean? One of the board members asked. I mean that if executives and senior leadership don't participate, if they don't model the behavior we're asking for, then this won't work, Alana said. People need to see that this matters to the people in charge. Not just in theory, in practice. David nodded slowly. You're right. I also want regular audits, Alana continued. Not just of training completion rates, but of actual outcomes. Are we hiring more diverse candidates? Are we promoting them? Are employees from underrepresented groups reporting better experiences? If the numbers don't change, then we're not doing our job. Patricia scribbled notes furiously. We can do that. And one more thing, Alana said. I want a hotline, anonymous, so employees can report incidents without fear of retaliation. And I want those reports reviewed by an independent third party, not just HR. That's a big ask, one of the board members said. It could open us up to a lot of complaints. Good, Alana said. We should be hearing those complaints. That's how we know where the problems are. David looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. You're not making this easy, he said. I'm not trying to, Alana replied. Good, David said, because easy won't fix this. He looked around the table. Captain Rivers' conditions are approved. Make it happen. Over the next 3 months, Meridian Airlines launched what would become known as the Rivers Initiative. It started with mandatory training sessions for every employee, not just an online module, but in-person workshops facilitated by external experts in unconscious bias, equity, and inclusion. The sessions were uncomfortable. People squirmed. Some got defensive. But the conversations happened. Senior leadership attended every session. David Crane sat in the front row, taking notes. He didn't hide in his office or send a memo. He showed up. Alana led many of the sessions herself. She told her story. Not just what happened at the reception desk, but the hundreds of smaller moments that had led up to it. The times she'd been mistaken for a flight attendant. The times passengers had demanded to speak to the real captain. The times colleagues had questioned her decisions in ways they never questioned male captains. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't make it comfortable. And, slowly, people started to understand. But understanding wasn't enough. Alana pushed for concrete changes. The company implemented new hiring practices designed to reduce bias in recruitment. Job descriptions were rewritten to focus on skills rather than vague cultural fit. Interview panels were required to include diverse members. Promotion processes were audited. Data showed that women and people of color were consistently rated lower in subjective categories like leadership presence and executive potential, categories that often reflected bias more than performance. The evaluation criteria were revised. The anonymous hotline went live. In the first month, it received over 200 reports. Some were minor, some were shocking, but every single one was investigated. And people were held accountable. Not just receptionists and mid-level managers. Senior leaders too. A vice president was demoted after multiple reports of discriminatory behavior. A regional manager was fired for retaliating against an employee who filed a complaint. The message was clear. This wasn't performative. This was real. 6 months after the incident at the executive terminal, Alana received an email. The subject line read, "Thank you." She opened it. Captain Rivers. My name is Keisha Morton. I'm a first officer with Meridian, based out of Atlanta. I've been with the company for 3 years. I wanted to reach out because of what you did. What happened to you in that lobby, it's happened to me too. Not in the same way, but in 1,000 small ways. Being overlooked for promotions. Having passengers refuse to believe I'm a pilot. Being asked if I'm qualified, in ways my male colleagues never are. I was thinking about leaving. I didn't think things would ever change. But then I heard about the Rivers Initiative. I attended one of the training sessions. And for the first time, I felt like someone was actually listening. Last week, I was promoted to captain. I'm the 3rd black woman in the company to reach that rank. And I know it's because you fought for people like me. So thank you. Thank you for not walking away. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for making it possible for the rest of us to belong. Keisha. Alana read the email 3 times. Then she closed her laptop and stared out the window of her office. She thought about that day in the lobby. The humiliation. The anger. The moment she decided she wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. She thought about Jason Merritt, the receptionist who'd been fired. She didn't know what had happened to him. Part of her felt bad. But a bigger part of her knew that consequences were necessary. Not for revenge, but for change. She thought about Sandra Calloway, the operations manager. She'd heard through the grapevine that Sandra had found another job, at a smaller company, in a lower position. She'd also heard that Sandra had written a public letter apologizing for her actions and acknowledging her own biases. Alana didn't know if the apology was genuine. But she hoped Sandra had learned something. She thought about David Crane, who had stood beside her when it would have been easier to smooth things over quietly. And she thought about Keisha Morton, and all the other pilots like her, who now had a chance to fly without constantly proving they deserved to be there. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. 1 year after the incident, Meridian Airlines held a company-wide town hall to discuss the progress of the Rivers Initiative. The auditorium was packed. Employees from every department filled the seats: pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, corporate staff. David Crane stood on stage, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Alana, and beside her stood a panel of employees from across the company, people of different races, genders, and backgrounds. People who had been part of the change. David spoke first. "A year ago," he said, "we had a wake-up call. An incident occurred that forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about this company. About how we treat people. About who we listen to. About who we believe belongs here." He paused. "Some of you were angry when we started this initiative. You felt like you were being accused of something. Like you were being called racist or biased when you'd never thought of yourselves that way." He looked out at the crowd. "I get it. No one wants to think of themselves as part of the problem. But here's the thing. This was never about individual blame. It was about a system. A culture. A set of assumptions that we all carry, whether we realize it or not." He gestured to Alana. Captain Rivers could have walked away. She could have accepted an apology and moved on. But she didn't. She stood up. She demanded change. And because of her, we're a better company today than we were a year ago. The auditorium erupted in applause. Alana stepped forward. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "But I didn't do this alone. Change doesn't happen because of one person. It happens because people choose to do the work. The uncomfortable, messy, difficult work of examining themselves and the systems they're part of." She looked out at the sea of faces. "Over the past year, I've had hundreds of conversations with employees. Some of those conversations were hard. People told me about the discrimination they'd faced. The microaggressions. The times they'd been passed over for promotions or made to feel like they didn't belong." She paused. "But I also talked to people who didn't think this was a problem. People who said, 'I don't see color,' or 'I treat everyone the same.' And I had to tell them, that's not enough. Because when you refuse to see someone's race or gender or background, you're also refusing to see the challenges they face. The barriers they have to overcome. The experiences that shape who they are." Her voice grew stronger. "Real change means seeing people fully. It means acknowledging that we don't all start from the same place. And it means actively working to create a culture where everyone, has the opportunity to succeed." She smiled slightly. "A year ago, I was humiliated in a lobby. Today, I'm standing on this stage because we chose to do something about it. Not just for me, for all of us." The applause was thunderous. 2 years later, Meridian Airlines was recognized as one of the top companies for diversity and inclusion in the aviation industry. The number of women in leadership positions had doubled. The number of pilots from underrepresented backgrounds had increased by 40%. Employee satisfaction scores, particularly among women and people of color, had reached all-time highs. But the most important change wasn't in the numbers. It was in the culture. Employees felt heard. They felt valued. They felt like they belonged. And that made all the difference. Alana continued flying. She continued leading. And she continued pushing for change. Not because the work was done, but because it never really would be. Change wasn't a destination. It was a commitment. A daily choice to do better. To listen harder. To see more clearly. And Alana was committed to making that choice every single day. Because she had learned something important in that lobby 2 years ago. She had learned that silence was complicity. That patience without action was just acceptance. And that sometimes, the most powerful thing you could do was refuse to stay quiet. One evening, Alana received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, on cream-colored stationery, in neat, careful script. Captain Rivers, you don't know me. My name is Amara. I'm 15 years old, and I live in Detroit. Last year, my teacher showed us a video about you in our social studies class. It was about what happened at the airline terminal, and how you started the Rivers Initiative. I just wanted to tell you that you changed my life. I've always wanted to be a pilot. But I didn't think I could. I'm black, I'm a girl, and everyone around me kept telling me to be realistic. To pick something safer, something more normal. But then I saw your story. And I realized that people like me can be pilots. That I don't have to let other people's doubts define me. So I joined my school's aviation club. I'm saving money for flight lessons. And one day, I'm going to be a captain, just like you. Thank you for showing me that it's possible. Thank you for not giving up. Amara. Alana sat at her kitchen table, the letter in her hands, tears streaming down her face. This was why she'd done it. Not for recognition, not for awards, not for her own vindication. But for Amara, for Keisha, for every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. Alana carefully folded the letter and placed it in a drawer where she kept the most important things. Letters from her mother, photos from her first solo flight, her captain's wings from the day she earned them. And she made a promise. She would keep fighting, for as long as it took. Because the world needed more Amaras. And Alana was going to make sure they had the chance to fly. Respect is not earned by power or position. It is owed to every person, simply because they are human. Never judge someone by what you see on the surface. Look deeper, listen harder, and always choose dignity over assumption. Because the person you dismiss today may be the one who changes everything tomorrow. Silence is complicity. Patience without action is acceptance. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay quiet. Stand up, speak out, fight for what's right, not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. You don't need permission to belong. You just need the courage to stand your ground. A story about dignity, justice, and the power of refusing to be invisible.